When last we joined our hero, it's weird calling myself a hero. Also, I'm not a hero for repairing a car. Anyway, I ran into a bunch of issues in the last video with the strut nut. Turns out it was a different size. Got a solution for it. We're going to join in to see that. But at the end of this video, I run into some more issues. Let's take a look. Alright, so I was able to find a socket that works here. This is actually like an O2 sensor socket, I believe, and 22 millimeter. It's just thin-walled enough, because that's the problem, getting the socket actually down into the hole there. Because you can't get a regular 22 millimeter socket in there, just it's too fat. This is like a thin wall one, and it has the slot in it, so I'm able to stick the hex key in there to hold the shock tube, the shock rod, whatever you want to call it. So I'm just gonna start turning and get this thing tightened down.
Yeah.
Alright, strut is complete, and while I was doing this, my parts arrived. So, I got new Soyb end links. These are Mel HD, see that? These are slightly different than the regular Mel, so the Mel without the HD is supposed to be like OEM quality. These are supposed to be like OEM plus quality. I've never really noticed a difference. It's supposed to use like harder rubber and things like that. Some people say that there's a little bit more noise vibration because of that, but I've never noticed it. I used it a bunch in my last project build I did. They seem to work pretty well, so I got more. Let's take a look at these. There it is. Soyb end link. Hey, say HD on them. That's cool. They look fine. I also got new caliper bolts because the old ones were a little corroded. That's nice. Just a comparison there. And you can see there is some rust forming on it. Not a whole lot. They probably could have been saved. Probably could have wire brushed them. Here's the thing though. You might be able to get all the corrosion off these, but if corrosion starts, if rust starts on these, it means the zinc plating has failed. And the only way that you can really fix this bolt is you can polish it back up, get all the corrosion off of it, and then re-zinc plate it. If you got a zinc plater or like the buckets that you need, because you need multiple chemicals to do it, great, cheaper, because this bolt was like $3 something. Probably could have saved this bolt for a few pennies, but I don't have that. Maybe one day. I also got the nuts for the Soyb end link, just because they were also looking pretty bad. They have like a little special little built-in washer that goes around the flange. They definitely need to be OEM. And I got the rotor set screws. So let's go get this stuff back on. All right. So we're gonna put the strut back in, but before we do, we need to clean this out. And then so there's a little bit of, kind of hard to see, but there's a little bit of corrosion on the knuckle here. And I want to wire brush that, degrease it, and then just throw a little bit of rust preventative paint on it, just to keep it from corroding any further. Also want to take a look up in there, clean all that out. And then there's a few bolts, and you can see a few of the bolts back there. They're missing. I'm just going to replace those as well while I'm at it. There's some more in here. Yeah, there's some missing as well. I think those are actually pop rivets. I don't have those, but I'll see what I can do. And then I'm going to put the strut back in and start reassembling this. Got to take the other sway bar end link off down below there. Got to take that off as well. All right, let's get started. sorry that this happened off camera, but I did get the strut in there. It was a huge pain. I had to wiggle it back and forth while jacking it up here. And then I had to grab a crowbar and put it back there in the pinch while I was prying and pulling on the tie rod end to get it to pop down in. But it eventually did pop down in. It's aligned correctly, so all I need to do now is put the bracket back on, the pinch bolt, torque it down to spec. I'm about to put the sway bar end links, the new ones, in, but first, before I did that, I just wanted to kind of show why this was bad. Should be pretty easy to see right off the bat. And some other decisions I made here. So the sway bar end links I got, as I said earlier, were male HD, and just looking at it, I can see that they are maybe a little bit more heavy duty. Just looking at the ball joint, you can see that the male are bigger. Definitely bigger. Other than that, just looking, the rod maybe looks a little thicker now, about the same. The weld's a little better on the male, honestly, compared to the OEM, which is a little surprising. I think these are OEM. Definitely old enough to be. I don't see any BMW stampings though, so maybe they're not. Anyway, as you can see by this, you know, like this one's covered. This end's covered in oil, and the ball joint still moves around pretty good. This one, however, is very loose and sloppy. It's definitely moving around way too easily, and the back end is completely cracked off. So that's definitely a sign that it's past its time, needs to be replaced. So, like I said, I got the Mel HDs. I'm gonna throw these in. Now, one thing, the Mel HDs, they just had a normal flange nut on the outside, which is fine. You know, this is how it normally hits for most cars with their sway bar end links. But the BMW ones have their own little integrated washer or whatever that is. Goes around the flange, and I thought, you know, BMW must have known something better here, so that's why they did that. I'm going to use them instead. Only cost another couple bucks, and I figure put the OEM ones back on. All right, let's get to it. One benefit that the OEM sway bar end link has over the male is that you can see it has a Torx style fitting in the end. A little hard to see that, but that's Torx. The male does not. So how you hold the ball joint is there's two little flat spots there, so you just get a wrench and you put it around the backside. It makes it a little harder to do. The Torx is definitely the easier way to get it on there, take it off, because it's all on one side, nice and convenient, easier to reach around. that does it for this side. New strut, all new components, got new Soyb bar end links, hardware, cleaned everything up, reinstalled the liner with the proper hardware, got the lines, the sensors back in the bracket where they're supposed to be, and just generally cleaned everything up. That wasn't so bad. Some swearing during the time lapse, and some minor headaches. Had to get a parts order halfway through, but yeah, that's why you take your time with it. It's not too bad. Before I wrap this side up, though, I would like to bleed the brakes, do a brake fluid flush on it, because they're not quite as crisp as I would want. The brakes aren't there, and hopefully the fluid flush will help. I also need to pound this flange back in, but I want to retorque it just to make sure, because it's possible it slipped a little bit. It's not at the same torque it was. That's why you pound the flange in. So I'm going to retorque it. I got to have it on the ground to do that. First things first, I want to do this brake fluid flush. So I got my BMW .4 here. I got my little mighty back, and I'm going to do a flush. The problem is I could not locate the brake fluid reservoir, and that is because in BMW's infinite wisdom here, they decided to hide it in the engine bay. So just coming up to the engine bay here, if you look around, normally your brake fluid reservoir is on the driver's side because it's supposed to be real close to the master, and the master is connected to your brake pedal, so driver's side. I don't see anything. Turns out it's underneath all this plastic right here. If anyone's curious on how I got this off, there is a 13 millimeter, it's like a plastic nut. It only rotates about half of a turn. And then there is this little bar clicks over top. You just push it that way. And then your cabin air filter rotates up and you just pull it out towards the front of the car. Cabin air filter. And then on the inside, there's 1, 2, 3, and then 4 of the exact same little half-turn plastic nuts. Just undo those. There is a center little slider thing. You just lift up on that tab right there and pull it towards you, and that just pops right out, which exposes that nut. Undo that, and then you just kind of wiggle it out. Pretty. I almost forgot. There actually is one more screw right there. That's supposed to be a Torx, I believe. Mine, apparently, it was lost through time. Before I put all these pieces back in the car, I'm definitely going to clean them off because that's disgusting. Really dirty. The cabin air filter doesn't look too bad. It's actually the original BMW one, so I don't know if it's probably not the original one. It would look a lot worse by now. It'd be definitely corroded. I'm probably going to replace that eventually. Not right this second. Wait till I get another parts order going and then take care of it. It's not the most important thing. Looking at the tray it sits in, I mean, that's disgusting. There's dead leaves. I mean, it's gross. And then looking back over here, you can see the rain channel here. It's all filthy. There's like stuff underneath the plastic back in there. So I'm going to clean all that out. Because you know what? You take care of your car, it takes care of you. Simple as that. Clean parts last longer. So one thing I did notice when I was looking for the brake fluid reservoir, at first I looked underneath this one. I don't know why. It's always on the driver. I don't know why I looked on this one first, but I did. So that's just the switch that tells your car that the hood is closed. And then there's this little sensor here. It doesn't connect to anything. And it's kind of just floating around in there. I think it's your ambient temperature sensor, but if anybody wants to comment and let me know what that is, I don't know how to reattach it, so I'll probably just get a zip tie or something because it looks like the plastic maybe is broken on it. Looks like maybe there was something right there that broke off, and I don't really want to replace that part. It's working fine as far as I can tell. no check engine light, and it reads the ambient temperature. So I'm not going to replace it yet. Maybe just a zip tie. No, it's not the best solution, but you know, it's a daily driver. These things happen. There it is. There is the brake fluid reservoir. So I'm going to start the bleeding process now. I'm going to drain out all the old fluid in the lines and replace it with the brand new BMW .4 fluid. Let's take a look at how I'm going to bleed these. So back here, right there, that's your bleeder screw. There's a little rubber cap that goes over top of it. I removed it. The brake pad wear sensor is there. I took that off. Stick a little bit of brake fluids coming out because I pre-loosened this to make it easier to do with one hand. But just take this, move it to the side. And then you stick a wrench right down on it. Now, I'm just going to tighten it back up. Technically, you're supposed to do this with like a line wrench, but I've never had any issues using an open end. And don't worry too much about letting air in the system. It will actually gravity bleed itself. And not to mention, you're going to bleed it here right now anyway. So we get the wrench on there, attach the nipple for the hand pump, right like here. And I'm just going to give it some vacuum, get like 15 PSI or so. It's like right in the middle of the gauge. There you go. Just pull in a vacuum. And we're just going to loosen her up. And see the brake fluid flowing out. We're just going to keep doing that, monitoring the pressure here. It's slowly going down. I'm going to make it go a little faster in a second here. And I'm going to do this 2-3 times probably, and then I'm making sure that the reservoir is full by going up there and putting more brake fluid in it. It's very important to make sure that the reservoir always stays full during this process, because if you dry the master out or the ABS, you will run into a lot of issues. Usually that's going to require you going to a shop and they'll have to bench bleed the master and probably reset your ABS. So just make sure you always have enough fluid in the reservoir. And I'm going to keep doing this until this fluid is like all but clear. Honestly, it doesn't look too bad now. So these brakes weren't as bad as I thought. Let's do some time lapse and get this done. I'd just like to show something that I think is awesome. I wish every car manufacturer would do this. So with your brake fluid reservoir, you have this sensor that goes down into the cap, and that's your level sensor. And it's just like a little float that goes up and down to tell the car how much fluid you have in there. And you have the cap, and that rotates freely around. So what happens is when you put the cap on, the sensor starts rotating around, and obviously if you just kept rotating around, it'd pull on the wire, and you don't want that. What BMW did was they put these little nubs right here. See those? Yeah. So you just set the sensor down in between those and just tighten it up. Look at that. That's cool. That's engineering right there. Let's take a look at this brake fluid. Might be a little hard to see. The canister's a little opaque. But yeah, it's brown. It's definitely not as clear as you want it to be. So it definitely was time for it to get flushed. And I removed, it looks like it's saying about 90, I think that's milliliters. Of course, it has a scale that doesn't have the volume on it, which is, oh yeah, they're milliliters. So 90 milliliters, which should be enough. I'm going to double check to make sure. If it's not, I'll just go back and do it again. And I replaced that 90 milliliters with fresh brake fluid. I'm going to do that on the other side, and then I'm going to go back to the back, and I'm going to do those corners as well. Get them all nice and clean. Should make the brakes nice and crisp. So I was wondering when this project was going to get fun. Just been going a little too easy for me. And I think it just got fun. Take a look back in there. That's a lot of grease around this, and you can see that boot. I mean, it's completely torn the whole way around. Everything's covered in grease back there. I think I might have a blown axle. I'm going to have to inspect it a little more. So let me know what you guys think. Did my then my project just get a lot more complicated. Not to mention, on the outside here, whoever was working on this thing, I mean, what is that? That thing is all mauled up. I mean, at least they pounded the flange in there, but they like pounded into the axle hub, and then the end of it's like all messed up. If you don't know what you're doing, don't work on a car, okay? Get some experience first, or get somebody that knows what they're doing. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video. Unfortunately, Project Broken Unicorn, she's earning her name. She's pretty broken right now. I did go and compare both sides, both axles, and just, you know, try to feel the play, and that side definitely has far more play and even like a clunk when you move it back and forth. Not to mention the person who worked on it before me, they reused that axle nut. That's why it was all banged up like that, which do not reuse an axle nut. That's not how that works. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know, am I in way over my head now at this point? I don't think I am. I don't think it's that bad. You know, this is what a project's supposed to be. And it's going to be fun. I'm going to get through it. It's going to be a far better car than what I started with, and that's the most rewarding part about it. So leave me a comment, like, share, subscribe, hit that bell notification. I appreciate the support. All right, here it goes. I got this. Come on. Come on. Nope. One of these times that's going to work.